everyone, Alex and my dad Mike here.
Hi, everyone from Florida.
So my dad's in Florida right now. I'm in Washington, and we wanted to record a more long form video of us talking about our experience, mainly, I think, my dad's experience after our tragedy, losing my mom to homicide from my brother's hands, and just kind of, in efforts of kind of bringing some conversation out about National Homicide Victims Day. We just wanted to have a conversation and just kind of go into how we coped, kind of what we went through, and how my dad is living his best life ever now.
And so are you.
And so am I. So, Pot, if you want to go into anything right now, we'll just start talking and kind of see how things go. And I'll try not to interrupt, but I will actually start off by just saying that almost 9 years ago, or almost 10 years ago, we're about 9 months or 9 years and kind of 6 months or so out from when my family went through an insane tragedy. We lost my mom to homicide. My brother is now in jail, so we essentially lost my brother, and he's not really mentally there. And my dad almost died. We also lost the house. My brother lit the house on fire, and it burned up in a huge, huge demonic type fire. And so we went through that, and we've been working on recovering since then. And my dad since moved to Florida a few years ago, and yeah, I want to hear from you, Pa.
Okay, yeah. When you're explaining that, my own personal case, it was not only homicide and losing the house, burned to the ground, all my belongings, but I never worked again after that point. I was basically on this disability for at least 6 months, and then I retired from my job. So it was a pretty major life change. For me, it was a new chapter turned in my life, and what's interesting about that is um, when I didn't know my wife was murdered yet, when I was in the house and I woke up from my initial sleep at night, and the house there was smoke in the house, and I saw the fire burning upstairs, and through this process of me trying to intervene and put the fire out, I realized it's not going to get put out. I wanted to save myself, and I wanted to save my house. Uh, I had dogs in the house, and Vicky was not there. I don't know. I know where she was now, but I came to grips. I accepted during that event that a new chapter is going to be turned in my life. The life I had was gone. I was in the house, going up the stairs to this burning, raging fire, lapping at the ceiling in my house, and I just accepted, this is it. God, you did this to me, or gave me this experience for some reason, and I accepted it, and that was quite the blessing to be that open to realizing, what was happening to me, and from that point on, it was just trying to figure out what this new chapter in my life was going to look like, and it was a lot of work and a lot of non-pleasant things that had to be done. So I empathize with people who are victims of homicide, because I know this is not an event. It's a long-term, rebuilding your life around this person that you lost, or around other circumstances in your life related to that. And so it's a big job, and you need help. And I had a lot of help. Alex's book talks about that a lot, about what it takes to have your life now, before a tragedy like that, have your life able to withstand something like that, or to increase your odds of being happy or not absolutely miserable. We talked a lot about, if this, right, people told us, if this happened to them, they'd be under the covers for 6 months. They'd be laying in bed crying for 6 months. And that's what it feels like, But you can do things in your life to deal with I said, Alex's book is a good thing. So
Yeah, and
that's
we had
that's
you know.
my initial
Go ahead.
thoughts, Alex.
What's that?
That's my initial that's my initial thoughts. Okay.
And now that was beautiful, Pa. um, we had a lot of community around us. We had friends and family that were like rushing to help and rushing to be there with us. Um, on my side of things, having my dad alive still there with me was huge. It was a really grounding factor for me. If I had lost him, like I've shared with many friends, I'd still be sitting there with my hands up and just so confused. And so it was, a good distraction for me. It was a good grounding thing. It was comforting that like I still had part of my family, and it took a lot of my focus. Like my focus narrowed there rather than thinking about my mom's death or my brother in jail as much. And so I would call it a good distraction, but we also were able to work through that and healed together and came through together. And his big thing after was like keep stress off our plates as much as possible. So whatever we don't have to do, or we don't have to work on today, or we don't have to finish today, just put it off. Like keep stress off our plate. His thing is like do one thing a day, um, and so not trying to do 10 things and being overwhelmed. And so, um, but yeah, um, if you have more to say, Paul, we'll just keep kind of bantering back and forth and sharing about that. We're just here to like talk about again National Homicide Victims Day and just some things that pop up in our minds today.
Yeah, and when you were talking about that, Alex, I was thinking about from the time the homicide happens onward, you're basically in charge, and you're actually in charge of your life all the time. But it's important to be in charge of your life because you will get, oh, you need to call these people. No, you don't. You need to do what you want to do, what you need to make a little progress every day, but actually survive. You need to survive. You need mental clarity, and you need a good attitude and a free spirit. Your spirit needs to be composed, and yeah, you're in charge, and you go at your pace. You're the director of this recovery. It might take 2 years or 5 years, but you're the director of it, and it's not some responsibility, but you're the one that can help yourself manage your attitude and your happiness and your sadness and whatever else you need to manage, because there's a lot to manage. Emotions are tough, emotions come. Emotions are not right or wrong. They are what they are. And it's up to you to figure out how to deal with them. And you need time to do that. Being busy and going from point to point to point is not allowing you to work on your own emotions. And I got to tell you something. I went through the tragedy in my mind 10,000 times. I don't know how many years that took, but I went through it every night in my mind. What happened? Could I have done something different? What if this happened? And I played this out so many times in my brain that I just, one day I just said to myself, I don't need to do this anymore. I've already learned everything that I could possibly learn in my mind going through reliving the events. And I just said, I'm done. There's nothing more for me to look at anymore. No matter what the issue was, I've already run it to ground. And so getting to that point was great for me. It was, and it happened slowly, but yeah, I don't have emotional trigger type reactions to those events anymore because I did that. Actually, my therapist said it's probably because she did that. So,
And
and I had a therapist. I had a therapist for 4 years. Okay, after this event. So,
mhm. And so,
yeah.
Pa, were
Yeah.
were things triggering to you? I feel like I'm a little more emotional than you, and I'd seen you cry maybe only a couple times, like around me or in public or whatever. But I asked that because my dad is like so sound of mind. Like he doesn't let outside factors impact him, and that's something that I admire in him, and that's so interesting about him. And that's not everybody. It's not everybody's dad or every person in their 50s, 60s, 70s. And so it's a special thing that he's worked on mentally to be able to be where he is when everything happened and today. But I was also just kind of wondering, like, did things trigger you?
I think early on they did, yeah. Um, that's why I kept going back those 10,000 times and reliving it, because I would get triggered and I'd have to go through it again. And I say 10,000, it might be, it's way less than that, because that'd be like 10 a day. But a lot, to the point where I got sick of doing it. You know what I mean? I got sick of reliving it. And yeah, I think at that point it took a lot of the trigger type emotions out of it. I don't know. I'm just me. You know what I mean? It's not. I don't know. You know, we're complex people. You know.
Yeah. Yeah, and I would get triggered just by emotions or my brother trying to call me from jail. It would kind of put me into a shock. I remember times where I just, would find myself just like so like sad, like emotional, that I'd lock myself in our gym office and just weep by myself. But I always kind of like went away from everybody, or like hid out to just like let it go. Um, I had stints of anger where I wanted to punch things, just like anger about my brother. I never punched anything or like hurt myself, luckily. But it's just like that was kind of like the raw emotion of what triggered me. Just um, again, I was pretty well distracted at first. It's like my dad's alive, he's in the hospital, and then all my energy and focus went there. But when things got calm and I was able to like think things through, or even like editing my book or reliving some of the things, I would cry pretty much every time. Even like a month ago or so, like editing the book, I'd be crying because it's just such a horrible, sad, emotional, like incomprehensible story.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, and that's time well spent. You know, spending time dealing with your emotions is very good, well spent time, and it's different for everyone. But there's no magic elixir. You know, for me, reliving it a lot of times, or you just getting triggered and being quiet and going off and dealing with it. It does get easier. It takes a lot of time. It takes years, years. You know,
Mm-hmm.
uh,
Well,
and,
yeah.
and I don't have a timeline about where I was at any of these points. You know, here I am 9 years later. Where other events happened that were notable, but
we'll we'll go into that later. uh, yeah. From what you were saying, some things popped in my head as far as like dealing with your emotions and stuff. Getting support from a counselor or a therapist or friends and family. Not dealing with your emotions can look like going down a bad road of alcohol, drugs, different things like that, other addictions. And and so, not to muddy this up, but that's also seems to be what happened with my brother. So, not dealing with emotions or not getting help, getting support, things like that. He got into drugs. He was smoking weed. He was testing out ecstasy and doing things like that. And it got to be a big habit of his. And, um, you know, he had undiagnosed mental illness, and adding on drugs as a way to probably escape or to deal with his own issues made it worse. And so recovering from tragedy, from homicide, losing somebody, not dealing with your emotions or doing it in a healthy way could lead to you getting into alcohol, drugs, addictions, worse things. And so, from what my dad was saying, with again dealing with your own emotions, what always comes to mind for me is like, what things can you control in your life? Sleep, nutrition, hydration, stress, who's around you, what needs to get done today. And again, having a counselor or a personal coach or friends and family to like help you navigate that if it's a little bit too much for you to even handle, if there's overwhelm, is important. Just to kind of reiterate more of what Dad was saying.
well, and Alex mentioned that that me being there after the tragedy was extremely helpful, and he was very helpful for me. I actually haven't even played it out in my mind how this all would have went, Alex, if you weren't there. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
But it was, and so as you prepare to have your life the way you're living your life right now, and read Alex's book about networking and people and friends and all this type of stuff, but also after the tragedy, who's your confidant? You know, and if that confidant is one of the people that was the victim, what's your plan then? You know, so we at least had each other. We had confidence. Vicky was quite the confidant for Alex for many years of his life, and so it was a huge, huge, huge loss for him and me too.
I was gonna say, and you too. Yeah.
Well, you would often talk to her more times a day than I did.
Yeah. No, it's so what's cool from what happened, not that it's anything's cool, but my dad and I got so much closer. Like we were fine before. We were buddies. I would go to him for advice and, big life things, and always say hi if I was home and have dinners. But my mom and I would talk every day. She was my best friend, she was my buddy, she was, as my dad said, my confidant, and I would talk to her about everything and literally call her almost every day. Um,
Right.
and so yeah, it was, just, imagine how hard it would be to lose someone that was your main person every day. And um, like, are you prepared for that? A big thing that we had to talk about is like, are you prepared for a tragedy in your life, or any problems in your life? um, you know um, and so, making sure that, like, you're prepared. That's why I wrote the book, to kind of give a perspective and like a lifeline for anyone that's gone through things or that might go through things, or you could help someone that you see is going through things. But yeah, you don't want to catch yourself in a position where you're unable to cope or function or do things, obviously.
Yeah, and it's, I was thinking, just as we're talking here, it's the homicide element is one thing, but there's a lot of people, you lose people in your life, elderly people, grandparents, all that type of stuff. And yeah, you lose confidence uh, a lot in your lifetime, actually. And so,
Yeah.
um, but yeah, Alex's book just reminds you to, assess your own life. Who's my confidant? You know what I mean? How do I deal with this? Um, but yeah, it's an element so you can tell whether or not you're exposed to going off the deep end if something like this happens, or whether or not you can survive it. And I think that's kind of what this is all about.
Yeah.
Us giving you some perspective on what we learned through our tragedy.
And we're both grounded in our faith and, belief in God and our trust in Jesus, and so that's a big part of it, and that's a big part of, like, the peace that we have. On top of that, like I said, you know, controlling the things that you can control, like your health, your decisions, your you know I love to drink, and after the tragedy, I found myself having a little bit too much, like, drinks at night with friends, family, maybe a little bit of a crutch to, like, numb things out. But I'd feel worse the next day. I'd feel hungover or feel more crappy, and I'm already gonna feel crappy from what we went through and the sadness and the hurt and the depression. Adding on the alcohol was not healthy. So it's like, how do I get good sleep? Not drink, or not drink too much, eat healthy, not feel crappy tomorrow, all these different things. And then, who's around you? Community. Do you have great people around you to support, that are going to uplift you rather than pull you down, or are going to be there rather than run away when there's hardships? And so, not only like a confidant, but just like, do you have great people surrounding you? And my dad's been saying that for years. Just that, the U.S. and just everybody, like, needs strong community to survive.
Right. And and what's interesting about that is I found it a surprise to me that after the tragedy and all these network of people around me, family and friends, come and help. And I had to learn how to accept help. People were giving me stuff. I didn't have any clothes. People were giving me things. And I, for the first time in my life, had to be appreciative a lot for all the gifts that people were throwing at me. And it was I had to learn how to do that because it wasn't natural to me. I never really needed that much help before. And it was a wonderful thing. And they loved giving as much as I liked receiving, or eventually learned how to like receiving.
Yeah, and I remember hearing about that a lot. Just Dad having he's a very generous person, and so having to turn the page and be willing to receive and accept it, was interesting to watch and 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 cool. And by that happening, when he was a little bit more sound himself, he gave even more. And so it's a cool cycle. There's a vicious cycle, but that's a cool cycle of giving, of helping everyone, and them helping more, and so on, and whatnot. But yeah.
Yeah, it was wonderful.
How do we feel here?
Do you want to continue next time?
Yeah, I think this is good.
Okay.
Yeah, wish everybody I want to say happy, but the best possible National Homicide Victims Day. That's possible for you, and we hope that you have more happiness coming. And if you need anything, don't hesitate to contact me via email or the socials, or comment on this video. My book's publishing in about 2 weeks, and we're here to support, and we want to give. And if you're moved to reach out to us, reach out to us. Any last words, Pa?
No. God bless you, everyone.
God bless you. Love you guys. See ya.
Bye.